Short of driving a car straight into a brick wall, which definitely stops it very quickly, we're going to look at different braking techniques. The first technique we're going to look at is something we've all been taught to do at one point or another in our life, especially in an emergency, and especially if it's slippery, is to pump the brakes. Now let's look at what pumping looks like on a graph. We're driving this car at 100 kilometers an hour, and we're going to ask our average driver to stop the car as fast as he could, pumping the brakes. Now, as you can see on the graph, pumping works like this. First you brake, then you don't. Then you brake, then you don't. Then you brake, then you don't. Then you brake, then you don't, etc. Bringing the car to a stop in 68 meters. Now, every time you don't brake, you are actually not slowing down. Let's look at what pumping does to the mass of the car. When you brake, we established that you transferred weight towards the front of the car, making the front end heavy and the rear end light. But what does that do to the springs? Braking also compresses the front springs. Now, what does a compressed spring love to do? It loves to bounce back. So now you're heading for a problem in an emergency and you're pumping the brakes. So you're actually creating a huge imbalance of the mass on top of the springs. Now we all learned how to pump owing to an old technique that came about in the 50s and 60s when the braking systems weren't very efficient. Back then, we had to give a couple of pumps on the pedal to get good pressure in the system. These days, power brakes do the work, and they do the work quite well. Do we need to pump? Probably not. Why are we still taught to pump? Probably because the people who are teaching young drivers today learned how to pump, and it worked for them. Unfortunately, a lot of young people are learning how to pump their ABS brakes at the present time. Let's look at our second scenario. We're going to ask our average driver to try to stop the car as quickly as he can, but this time don't pump. Just stay on the brake pedal. And he'll be able to stop the car in 53 meters just by virtue of not having come off the brake pedal. It's also much more stable for the mass. Now the next scenario is we're going to scare the driver. We're going to have him drive on the road at 100 kilometers an hour, same speed, and we have our trusty assistant hiding in the ditch that's going to throw something in front of the car to get the driver to panic brake. And look at what the driver is able to do. He's able to stop the car in 50 meters. Now we're driving a car here that does not have ABS brakes, and you all know that if you panic brake with no ABS, you lock up the four wheels. And although the stopping distance is good, there's a drawback. The steering wheel doesn't work. If you're locked up, you could steer the wheel all you want, may as well take it off and give it to the passenger. It is absolutely useless.